Welcome, this is Cheating Tales Stories. Tell me where you're watching from in the comments below. Before we dive into today's story, I want to ask you something that really connects to what we're about to explore together. Have you ever been in a relationship where you felt like you were losing yourself piece by piece, where someone else seemed to hold all the cards and make all the decisions? It's a suffocating feeling that can make you question your own worth and judgment. Tell me in the comments below if you've ever experienced that kind of control in your life. My name is Peterson, and for 8 years, I thought I was living in a normal marriage with my wife, Cordelia. Looking back now, I realize how naive I was about what normal actually meant. Cordelia had always been particular about things. She insisted on managing our finances, claiming she was better with numbers. She chose our furniture, our vacation destinations, even the restaurants we'd visit for date nights. At first, I found her take-charge attitude attractive. She seemed so confident, so sure of herself. I was working long hours as a software engineer, and honestly, it was easier to let her handle the domestic decisions. But over the years, that control began to expand into every corner of our lives. She monitored my spending, questioning every purchase over $20. She scheduled my social activities, gradually steering me away from friends she deemed negative influences. When I wanted to take a weekend fishing trip with my college buddies, she'd create elaborate reasons why that weekend wouldn't work. Eventually, I stopped trying. The breaking point came on a Tuesday, evening in March. I'd received a promotion at work, something I'd been working toward for 2 years. When I came home excited to share the news, Cordelia barely looked up from her laptop. "That's nice, Peterson," she said dismissively. "By the way, I've decided we're refinancing the house. I already contacted 3 lenders." I stood there, holding a bottle of champagne I'd bought to celebrate, feeling completely deflated. "Don't you think we should discuss major financial decisions together?" She finally looked at me, and I'll never forget the expression on her face. It was almost amused, like I'd told a joke she found mildly entertaining. "Peterson, let's be honest. When have you ever made a good financial decision without my input? Remember when you wanted to invest in that startup? Or when you thought we should buy that expensive car? I'm protecting us from your poor judgment." That night, lying in bed while she slept peacefully beside me, I stared at the ceiling and wondered when I'd become such a passive participant in my own life. The man who'd built complex software systems that millions of people use daily somehow couldn't be trusted to choose a restaurant for dinner. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I made a decision without consulting Cordelia first. I opened my own checking account. It wasn't about hiding money or planning anything dramatic. I just wanted to feel like I had some autonomy, some small corner of my life that was mine to control. I deposited a modest amount from my next paycheck, money that would have normally gone into our joint account. For 3 weeks, having that secret account felt like a small victory. I'd check the balance on my phone sometimes, just to remind myself it existed. It was pathetic, really. How such a tiny act of independence made me feel more like myself than I had in years. Then Cordelia found out. I came home from work to find her sitting at our kitchen table with a stack of bank statements spread out in front of her. Her laptop was open, and I could see she'd been going through our financial records with the precision of an auditor. "We need to talk," she said, her voice deadly calm. My heart started racing. I'd never seen her look so coldly furious. "I found your little secret account, Peterson. Did you really think you could hide financial activity from me? I monitor everything that flows through our credit reports and banking systems." I tried to explain that I just wanted some independence, that it wasn't about hiding anything significant. But she cut me off. "This is exactly why I have to control our finances. You're irresponsible and sneaky. You've proven you can't be trusted." Then she laughed. Actually laughed. "You thought you were being so clever, didn't you? Opening your own account like some rebellious teenager. It's almost cute how you thought you could outsmart me." That laugh. It was cold and condescending in a way that made my blood freeze. In that moment, I realized she didn't see me as her partner. I was more like a child she had to manage, someone whose attempts at independence were amusing rather than valid. But what happened next changed everything. As she was gathering up the bank statements, a piece of paper fell from the stack. It was a statement from an account I didn't recognize. Before she could grab it, I picked it up and saw something that made my world tilt. It was a joint savings account in Cordelia's name and someone else's, someone named Trevor Hutchinson. The balance was substantial, over $40,000. My hands started shaking as I stared at the statement. Cordelia, what is this? For the first time in our 8-year marriage, I saw genuine panic flash across her face. That's not what you think it is. But I was already connecting dots that I'd been willfully blind to for months. The mysterious phone calls she'd take in the other room. The new clothes that seemed too expensive for our budget. The way she'd sometimes come home later than expected. From her job at the marketing firm, claiming she'd been working overtime. Who is Trevor Hutchinson? I asked, my voice barely steady. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating, trying to decide how much truth she could get away with. He's someone from work. It's complicated. Complicated. That word hung in the air between us like a confession. Over the next hour, the truth came out in pieces. Trevor was her boss. They'd been having an affair for over a year. The joint account was for their future together. A future that apparently didn't include me. But the worst part wasn't the affair itself. It was the revelation of how completely she'd been manipulating our entire marriage. I kept you dependent on me, she admitted with shocking casualness. It was easier to manage our situation if you didn't have access to everything. If you'd seen all our financial records, you might have noticed money being moved around. She'd been systematically isolating me from our financial reality while funneling money into a secret life with another man. Every time she'd criticized my judgment or insisted on maintaining control, she'd been protecting her deception. You laughed at me for wanting independence, I said, feeling a strange calm settling over me. You made me feel like I was incapable of managing my own life. Because it worked, she replied with brutal honesty. You stopped questioning things. You stopped paying attention. It made everything easier. In that moment, I realized that the woman I'd been married to for 8 years was essentially a stranger. The person I'd trusted with my heart, my home, my future, had been treating our entire relationship like a chess game where I was never told I was playing. But here's the thing about people who love control. They often underestimate what happens when they lose it. The next morning, while Cordelia was at work, I did something she'd never expect from the passive, manageable husband she thought she knew. I called a divorce attorney. Not just any attorney. I called the best family law firm in the city. I spent 3 hours detailing 8 years of financial manipulation and emotional control, backed up by the documentation she'd been careless enough to leave accessible. When Cordelia came home that evening, I was sitting at our kitchen table with my own stack of papers. Legal papers. We need to talk, I said, using her own words from the day before. The color drained from her face as she saw the divorce petition. But what really seemed to shock her was the detailed financial disclosure I'd prepared. Every secret account, every unexplained transfer, every dollar that had been moved without my knowledge. How did you? Turns out when you're married to someone for 8 years, you learn their passwords, I said calmly. And when you work in software, you know how to trace digital footprints. For the first time in our marriage, Cordelia looked genuinely afraid. Peterson, we can work through this. What Trevor and I have, it's not serious. We can go to counseling. But I was done being managed. The house is in both our names, but I've been making the mortgage payments from my salary for years. The car you drive is titled to me. The credit cards you've been using for your secret life are backed by my credit score. I slid another document across the table. I'm freezing all joint accounts effective immediately. I'm removing your access to credit cards tied to my income. And I'm filing for legal separation while we sort out the divorce terms. She stared at me like I'd transformed into a completely different person. You can't do this. You don't know how to handle our finances. You'll destroy everything. No, Cordelia. You already did that. The woman who'd spent 8 years convincing me I was incapable of making good decisions suddenly found herself with no access to the financial resources she'd been controlling. The joint account with Trevor might have $40,000, but she couldn't pay our mortgage with it without admitting to adultery in the divorce proceedings. 3 months later, our divorce was finalized. Cordelia fought for alimony, claiming she'd sacrificed her career to manage our household. But when the financial records were examined by the court, her deception became impossible to hide. The judge was not sympathetic to someone. who'd been systematically deceiving their spouse while claiming financial dependency. I kept the house, the car, and most importantly, my self-respect. Cordelia moved in with Trevor. But from what I heard through mutual acquaintances, that relationship didn't survive the stress of their deception being exposed. Today, I'm in a relationship with someone named Isabella, a woman who views partnership as exactly that, a partnership. When we make decisions about money, travel, or even what to have for dinner, we discuss them together. Not because either of us is incapable of choosing, but because we respect each other's input. Sometimes I think about that moment when Cordelia laughed at my attempt to have some independence. She thought she was so clever, so in control of everything. But people who need to control, others often do so because they're terrified of ball. What happens when that control slips? In the end, the thing she was most afraid of losing was the only thing that mattered, the power to manipulate someone who trusted her. I hope this story reminds you that in healthy relationships, control isn't something one person holds over another. It's something you share, built on mutual respect and trust. And if you're in a situation where you feel like you're losing yourself to someone else's need for control, remember that you always have more power than you think. Thanks for listening to my story today. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear about your experiences in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories about the complicated, sometimes painful, but ultimately hopeful journey of human relationships.